My guest today is one of the best Arizona volleyball players ever. She recorded over 1,000 kills in 4 years in Tucson, and she helped lead the Wildcats to their first ever Pac-10 championship in the year 2000. And then that same year, she also helped Arizona reach the Elite Eight for the very first time in the NCAA tournament. Allison Napier. Allison, such an honor to be chatting with you today. And what's so cool is that you're currently living in Australia. So, how did you wind up there?
Oh, it's a tale as old as time, Sam. I met a boy. Um, I met I met him when I was living in Sacramento, and he was in Napa. So we sort of met the old-fashioned way on online dating, and the rest is history. Yeah, so he's was born and raised in the area that we live in now. I live in a tiny little town called Indented Head in Victoria, just across the bay from Melbourne. So he grew up in this area, and about a year and a half, maybe 2 years after we met, we moved here. Yeah.
Nice, nice. It's awesome. What have been some of your favorite parts about living in Australia?
Oh, the novelty has worn off a little bit. The accent, of course, was like something that I had to get used to, and I haven't adopted an Australian accent at all, which is I'm very thankful for. I do love the accent, but I do find it difficult sometimes when I hear people adopt other accents because I just feel like, why? You're a whole adult with your whole life, speaking in a certain way. And I never really understood how people sort of take on the accent of where they're from. But that was something I had to get used to because, like in the United States, there are so many different accents and things like that. But the culture is pretty similar, to be honest. I mean, it's a very um, similar culture to the United States. We love in California, especially where I grew up. We love the beach. Um, we love to eat our chips, what we call them here, French fries in the United States. We love, sport. Sport's a massive thing here. It took me a while to get used to AFL football, which is a lot different than anything we had experience or I had experience with in the United States. They call the NFL sort of football, gridiron football here. And we don't get a lot of that. I watch the Super Bowl on Monday mornings, not on Sunday afternoons like everyone else. But yeah, that took a little bit of getting used to.
Have you been to any AFL matches?
I haven't actually. Our closest team would be the Geelong Cats, which is awesome because they have a really cool like cat logo and you can buy all the gear that has the big cats on it and being an Arizona Wildcat. I was very, very excited to see that as sort of my home team. But we haven't really been to too many games. We probably we closely follow the NRL, which is the rugby league here in Australia. And that resembles a little bit more sort of the NFL style, a little bit more organized, a little bit like it just reminds me so much more of American football. And that's probably why I like it a little bit more. So we're big Melbourne Storm fans. Um, and no, that's been fun. Yeah. I don't want the boys to play it. I have three boys, but it is fun to watch. Yeah.
Sometimes on YouTube, I'll see highlights from the AFL and the, teams like the Sydney Swans,
Hmm.
whatnot. And it's so interesting because the players like they jump on each other's backs, and
Yeah.
I'm like, what? Like what's happening?
Yeah, they call those I think, and man, if anybody from Australia watches this, I'll get crucified if I get this wrong. But I think they call those hangers where they jump up off and they sort of position themselves and jump off somebody else's back so they can get higher to get the ball. But yeah, it's a very active game. It's pretty fast paced and crazy. But yeah, yeah, it is pretty wild.
Something that I thought was really cool is I saw that at one point you worked for Elle magazine in New York, which is pretty cool. I mean, how did that come about?
That was sort of by accident. My closest friend who I played volleyball with at Arizona, her name's Lauren. She had gotten an internship with the magazine, and she was a year behind me in school. And so when she graduated, she was moving to New York, and so I sort of like on a whim decided I was going to move with her. And so when I got there, I started working in restaurants. I was a hostess, a server, and I think I worked in two different restaurants when I first got there. And then a couple months in to living in New York, she had mentioned that the sales and advertising sales department was looking for an executive assistant for the publisher, the associate publisher at the time. So, um, you know, I had a little bit of luck with that, and so I got that position, and that was a lot of fun. It was a lot of fun. It's a lot, the Devil Wears Prada sort of spoof on the publishing world, the fashion publishing world, wasn't as off base as you might think. But I had a lovely experience, and the people I worked with were great.
Let's get into your volleyball career now. I mean, just how did you first get interested in the sport?
Well, I was a basketball player to start when I was, younger, and I think I was probably maybe in eighth grade. My older sister was going to a club team tryout. So in with volleyball, like many sports, you play sort of on this travel or club team that's not associated with your high school. And so she was going to a tryout for a club team, and I didn't want to go because I was hell bent on being a basketball player. And I was still laying in my bed, and I remember it to this day. My dad yelled at me from his bedroom and said, "Just get up and go." So I did. I got up and I went with her to the tryout, and it went well. I was a natural sort of volleyball player. Basketball and volleyball sort of have similar, um, you know, there's a lot of similarities, even though, obviously very different sports, but the way that you need to move in both sports is very similar. So I picked it up pretty quickly. Um, yeah, and it was a natural fit for me, and I enjoyed, not getting beat up all the time, not getting bruised and elbowed and all those things. So it sort of became my number one sport pretty quickly after that.
When it came time to decide where to go to college, what factors played into your decision to go to U of A?
Mm. Um, well, I was heavily recruited um as a volleyball player, but I had no idea how to navigate that space. Like I didn't know anyone else really in my circle of friends, family, anyone that had been to university before. I never mind the fact getting some like approach to get an athletic scholarship. No one had any sort of experience with that. So I was pretty bad at being a recruit, I'll be honest. I wasn't great at communicating. I had like shoe boxes full of letters and recruiting letters and questionnaires and how they did it in the old days. They sent you this questionnaire, you sent it back if you had any interest, and then you'd start, your sort of letter writing campaign. And I was terrible at all of it. And one year we went to, there was a tournament at U of A. So we drove from Southern California. This was with my club team, and I just fell in love with the campus. And so I asked my coach at the time if he would reach out to the U of A coach. I knew nothing about them. Um, but I just loved the campus. I thought it was the coolest place. And so they actually didn't have a scholarship available at the time, which is why I wasn't being recruited by them. Um, and this was late. This was in my senior year. And so it just sort of fell into place where they had a couple of changes on their roster. A couple things happened. They ended up, because of my interest in them, they sort of came and saw me play a little bit. And and Dave was interested in me as a player. So it worked out really well. It was a little bit serendipitous, but I was very thankful that it did. And a few months later, I was getting on a plane, a Southwest Airlines plane, and Rita picked me up, and that was that. Yeah.
What were your first impressions, of campus like, when you first arrived on campus? Like, what were your thoughts and everything?
I had the sneak peek of being on campus for that tournament. But I hadn't seen the full scale, sort of campus in action. I did do a recruiting trip there, when there was a little bit going on, but those types of things are a little bit surreal. I'm not sure how much you've spoken with, guests about the recruitment process, but they sort of pull out all the stops for you, make sure everything seems, like flashy and great, and you never can get used to what you're going to experience the first day when you're there for real as a student athlete. So it was one of those It was a little bit of a shock. Like I said, I didn't have a ton of people around me that had experience with this. And so it was it was, I had a blast from the beginning. I met wonderful people straight away. I can't imagine a better sort of, it was a long time ago now, but I can't imagine a better experience in terms of how, you know, how nice they made it for us to be able to thrive as student athletes. I wish I would have been a little bit better and more focused as a student athlete looking back at it now. But it was it was a magical time, yeah.
When you were a student, what were your favorite things to do in and around Tucson?
Yeah, Tucson's a cool place, you know. I mean, I was always a city person and I grew up in Orange County, California. And so Tucson was very much a departure from that. But it's a magical, magical place in terms of, the surrounding area. The desert is, as you know, in Phoenix as well, is quite lovely if you can get out into it. So, we did a little bit of getting out into the desert, hung out with my teammates a lot, and we had a great time. It's a tight-knit community as a student athlete at U of A. So we built great friendships with a lot of the other sports people. And so it was just, yeah, we just sort of enjoyed life in the little bubble. Yeah, probably a little bit too much partying and probably a little bit too much of that kind of thing happening, over the course of the years. But that's all part of the experience, and it teaches you a lot, how to be responsible, accountability, when that have to know when enough is enough. You have to know when you're going to be relied upon the next day. So all those things build massive life skills that, you can't really learn in other environments.
No, the folks in Tucson, know they're no matter what sport it is, they always show up and they always show out, at all the events and everything, and it's it's always really cool to see kind of the passion that the community has for the university.
Yeah, it was a very good experience that way. The community is absolutely a massive part of the U of A experience as a student athlete. And no, it's amazing just going into the local, Chinese food shop and seeing your poster on the wall or something, and or you walking in through the mall and the little girls that play club volleyball recognize who you are. And so that's one aspect of it that you don't get in bigger communities. So yeah, the community is a massive supporter of the sports athletic program and everything. And yeah, it's terrific experience for me.
Yeah, absolutely. And now, as we are on different sides of the ASU U of A rivalry, I do have to ask,
Sure.
what was it like for you, for you personally, getting to be a part of the rivalry?
Yeah, it's a natural rivalry, and just being the two the biggest universities in the state, and you know, I didn't. There were quite a few people that played sports at U of A who were from Arizona, so it was probably a little bit more of a heart tug for them, if we had the horrible experience of losing to ASU. But that didn't happen much. But no, it was good fun, like actually years later, some of the people that we had played against, used to come down to Tucson, and it became easy to just sort of share the experience of having that rivalry. And there's like no actual hard feelings, there's a respect there. Um, I mean, at least from my perspective, there's no hard feelings. There's a respect there, we're all sort of representing our tribe, if you know what I mean? And so it's just one of those things where it creates a great story, it creates a great atmosphere, it creates good energy within the communities that we are involved in. And so I loved being part of that rivalry.
I read that in a that during that great 2000 season for y'all, U of A clinched the Pac-10 championship at McHale, and it was against ASU, and you had yeah like over 30 kills, like it's
Hmm.
performance, and it's it's really cool, I think, for you because you know n- in every sport I feel like that rivalry it's defined by the big time players who show up
Hmm.
in the big moments, and you certainly did that. So,
I that is one of the best memories that I'll have throughout my life, I think. Not because it was against ASU. I'm not saying it for that reason, but the I did have a pretty good game. And I had struggled really throughout my career at the university to really come into my own as a player. And that night sort of was a culmination of the struggles and then hit with the success of, being the first um, team at school history to sort of clinch the Pac-10 title that night was just an amazing experience and something I'll always remember. It was really cool.
it's really cool to have those, have those big moments in McHale
Mm.
as well. I mean, such a historic venue. I mean, that's it's pretty awesome.
Yeah, I'm looking forward. We're actually traveling back to the United States for a month in August. So I'm excited to visit Tucson. My good friend has a house there, so we'll go and visit. And then no doubt I'll be knocking on Rita's door, who's the head coach there now, and making sure that she knows that she needs to show me around all the new shiny new things they have going there, I'm sure. But I'm excited to get back and revisit.
Yeah, right on, right on. Take me through, know your senior year in 2000 and just that
Mm.
great postseason run. I mean, what made that season so special?
We were a pretty experienced team at that time. Part of my senior class, there was at least one or two fifth year seniors. So we had a good sort of senior junior class. That following year they went on to the Final Four. So it was just the right players at the right time. And like I said a little bit earlier, the struggle with me, like my sort of freshman, sophomore year was really difficult for me. I felt like I was just not living up to my potential. I felt the pressure of sort of the reality that other people sort of recognize that as well. And so it was just one of those times in your life where you sort of have these moments where you go, okay, so how is this going to work from now on? And there was a real mind shift for me in terms of how I trained and how I focused and the things that I wanted to see change within my game. And it sort of just was something that I think the whole team went through. I think we all sort of recognized that we were a better team than we were playing the years before. And I think there was just a real shift and a real focus, but it really was the right combination of attitudes and willingness that sort of made that year special. And it carried on to the following year. Yeah.
Then Dave Rubio as well, was your coach at
Mhm.
Arizona. What would you say were the most important things that you learned from him?
Yeah, Dave was a huge part of my life in my young adulthood. He really did take a chance on me as a player, and he did with a couple of other players on the team at the time. We weren't these super polished volleyball players, and the game, the way it was played at the time, was before sort of that the new that's not new scoring, but the scoring sort of system had changed the year after we the year or two after we won the Pac-10. So, they really sort of were able to take a chance on just pure athletes and teach them the skills as they went along, sort of fake it till you make it sort of thing. And he was pretty brave doing that, really, but it worked out in the end. And he still is just a really good guy, works really hard, cares so much about his players, his former players. Um, and he just one of he expected a lot of us, which I really appreciated now. I didn't appreciate it much back then, but he yeah, just taught me a lot of those sort of adult life lessons that you need to that you can have carry on throughout your life. Yeah.
Other than that ASU U of A match we were talking about earlier, are there any other specific matches during your time at Arizona that really stick out to you?
We always loved to play USC. Um, I'm not sure why, but we did love to play USC. We always sort of felt like we got so close to beating them um, a number of times, and it never just Like there's a couple of times where it just didn't work out for us. And so when, we had those opportunities and were able to beat them, it was always a really fun night for us. So all the games against USC stood out for me for that reason. There was something about them that we really always wanted to win. We always played really well up in Washington and Oregon as well. So those were great games, and just loved going up to those schools. The Pacific Northwest was a great area to visit, and I wouldn't have gone had I not played for U of A. So that was a lot of fun going up there. We just really had a good time all the time. We made road trips a party basically, not like in a bad sense, but we always had music blasting. We were always doing our little dancing in the hotel. We got coaches involved with some fun stuff, and it was just yeah, it was just a good time.
Yeah, that's great. That's great. After your college career, you played professionally in Puerto Rico, which is super
Mm.
awesome. What are your favorite memories from that experience?
Oh, that was so long ago. My goodness, sometimes forget about those things. No, it was good just to be in a different, environment. I lived in a hotel that had a little casino, so it always cracked me up to see I would see the same faces sort of shuffling in to play the slot machines or something. And that was a really good experience. And just being submersed in another culture was an awesome experience. It did get a little bit long. I got a sort of not homesick, but I sort of I felt the island after a while, living on a small island. I felt that. So it was a great experience, but it was yeah, one and done for me in that regard.
Yeah, and then later in 2007, you actually returned to Arizona as an assistant coach. I mean, just what did that mean to you personally, being able to return to your old stomping grounds?
Yeah, it was definitely not a plan of mine. I had no intention of becoming a coach. Um, I was living in New York at the time and was sort of reflecting on my potential career paths with the roles I was playing and the positions I had held in New York, and none of them really, sort of felt right. So I was kicking around the idea of going to grad school. And around that time, I think Rita had taken a head coaching job at a different school. And so, and I think Dana, one of my old teammates, was coaching and she had moved on. And so Dave just called me up and it just seemed like the right time to make a move like that. Yeah, I hadn't really gone out to become a coach. And I was not very good at it, I will admit. It took me a while to sort of get my bearings straight. I had a hard time a little bit with personality management and sort of setting the right expectations of myself and the players. And it wasn't a natural fit for me. I would be a lot better at it now than I was then. But certainly a great experience. And it was so nice to be back on campus and as a coach and getting to know that side of the business was great. It was a really good sort of jump off point to my next phase in the career as well. So in my life. And so yeah, it was a great experience. And I was super thankful for Dave to have thought of me as for somebody for that role. Yeah. So I was there for I think 3 or 4 seasons.
I think you helped out with like the volleyball camps, like as well. I think kind of during that time.
Yeah, so Dave's volleyball camps are epic. They expanded over like 3 weeks or something in the summer, and so basically, I think the person in the role in my coaching role sort of takes on the administrative voluntarily because it's a separate business, but get uh sort of takes over the admin portion of that and it was epic. I hid the energy that Dave had and still has. I think they're still the Dave Rubio volleyball camps. Um, just is endless. So much energy, and it was fun. It was like learning how to run a small business, which is what I do now and what I help other people do now. So it's uh yeah, it was definitely a great learning curve and a great learning experience.
Yeah, absolutely. Just overall, what impact has the University of Arizona had on your life?
From a sort of macro perspective, the relationships I built over the years, um, really can't be compared. Like I have some of the closest friends I'll ever have that I've had for a long time. Some of the people that you get to know, even now, if I'm checking out some NBA games or something, I can hear Richard's voice doing commentary, and I'm like, oh goodness, Richard again. Like so it's just one of those things like you just don't get that other, in other environments. Going to a school like the U of A and being a student athlete opens up those sort of connections for you, and it's a really cool thing. And I wouldn't have had them otherwise. And it really does impact. I've connected with, via LinkedIn with all kinds of people that I had gone to school with, and it's just so nice to see where everyone is now and what everybody's up to, and most of which, being very successful and doing their thing, and it's really cool. And it's been just yeah, great experience.
In terms of your job and your work, what sort of stuff, are you doing today?
Yeah, I had to sort of pivot a little bit. When I moved to Australia, I had just one one little one named Cyril. He was 5 months old when we moved here. So I sort of left my whole entire network behind. And then when Cyril was a couple years old, we ended up having twins. So and then it turned out to be about 6 years or maybe, yes, 5 or 6 years where I was completely out of the workforce. And so I sort of, before we left the United States, I was doing political sort of campaigning and fundraising for some elected officials in California. And so my career background had sort of shifted to sort of event management and things. So I didn't really want to get back into that when I started working here in Australia, because I just didn't want to have to be gone for the weekends and all those things. So I just started a sort of freelance, sort of remote based corporate support sort of um, business, and it's been awesome. It's like there's a lot of remote based companies now, which is one of those things that, there's lots of debate about, but there are plenty of companies that are remote only. And so they do need people to sort of bring the organization together. And that's sort of what I do. I work for 3 or 4 different companies now, and right from the comfort of my home office, which is always good. And it allows me the flexibility to still be there, for the kids stuff. I coach one of the basketball teams. I'm president of the school council. I do these things that I'm super proud of, and I'm able to do that because I have flexibility in my workspace. But yeah, so that's what I do for work. And it's really quite fun. And I enjoy it because I meet people from all over Australia. We have one company I work with has a lot of clients in the United States as well. So it's kind of fun to have to do the mental math to get on the right time zone there as well. And yeah, so that's what I do now. It's a work in progress. But yeah, that stretch of time when you're having kids is rough. It takes its toll on the career paths for a lot of us women. And so it's just one of those things where I sort of had to find a new way to get back in and build some connections and build a network. And I was able to do that through what I'm doing now. So it's proving to be successful. Yeah.
Well, you're certainly staying productive. No, 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 no. I think it's really, really cool. You're doing all these different things, stuff. And it's awesome. Doing good stuff.
Yeah, I enjoy the way my life is going. I got a bit stir crazy with being a stay-at-home mom for a while, and we say mom here in Australia, not mom, um but I'm happy with how everything is going. And yeah, it's exciting to see the kids grow up. It's exciting to pass on some of those, lessons that you learn in in my life as a young person. Um and so yeah, it's all just flowing as it should, I guess.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. And no, no, no. And what's that journey been like for you? As a parent, being able to raise your kids.
Yeah, motherhood and parenthood, I'm sure it's the same for men. But geez, that's a shock to your system. Uh, I was a little bit older when I had my first. So I was 36 when I had Cyril, and that was just a hard shock, to be honest, because I had sort of had my whole life just going the way I wanted it to go, and then all of a sudden you're hit with this responsibility that is yeah, it's just undescribable, and it obviously very rewarding. I love being a mom and love getting involved in what they're doing and love to watch them get excited about things and love how young they keep me. But it is one of those things that is a very, thankless job, but very rewarding. Yeah.
Now, last question here. What is the biggest piece of advice that you have for aspiring volleyball players?
Well, honestly, the game has probably changed a little bit since I played it. Oh, I know it has, at least in terms of scoring and sort of the pace of it. But not limiting it to volleyball players. The best piece of advice I would say to young people that are student athletes is to um, maybe take a few more chances. So one thing I see happening with young people that I work with is that I feel like life is so curated now with, social media and things. Like back in my day, we didn't have those things. So we sort of had to feel things out ourselves. We didn't have a ton of information about things until we were in it. And so I feel like those were things that really built my character and built some of the things that I take with me today. So I would challenge people growing up in the time that we're growing up with the connectedness to really get out and try to learn something new without having a whole lot of curated experience already on mind, if that or in your mind, if that makes sense. So that's the biggest advice I would give. I think it builds a lot of depth. It builds character to sort of toss yourself into a new situation without knowing anything about it. And I feel like there's not a whole lot of opportunity for people to do that anymore. So that would be my piece of advice. Just go out and experience something completely new and different and make some mistakes and take some risks and do it calculated and safely, but do some stuff that gets you out of your comfort zone.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that is some wonderful, wonderful advice. Gosh, well, thank you so much, Allison, for giving me some of your time today and being able to chat with you. It was a real honor. So just thank you so much.
Thanks, Sam. I appreciate it.